Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have a wonderful guest on our today's show, which seems that we're going to talk about something very limited and very important, but really it's much more than that. There's a lot of sub-agendas here. Our guest today is Rick Najera. We're talking about the Writers Guild of America strike and making a livable wage. That seems to be what's going on right now in the news and the way it's been presented. But let me bring in Rick right now with his background. Rick Najera is an award-winning screenwriter, actor, director, producer, sketch comedian, author, playwright, coach, and national speaker for the expansive portfolio of credits to all forms of entertainment. He has numerous industry awards for his work. He's done films with Sidney Poitier, George Clooney, most recently Mario Lopez, writing sketches for Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx. Najera is best known for starring in Broadway in his award-winning self-penned stage play, Latino Logs, directed by comedy legend Cheech Marin. Najera is only one of three Latinos to have ever written and star in their own play on Broadway. And your list and your awards go on and on and on. Rick, thank you very much for being on our program. And let's begin. First of all, right now, I know you really are heavily supporting the strike between the Writers Guild of America. Can you bring us up to date? What is the issues and what makes this strike different from the one that happened 15 years ago?
Well, 15 years ago, the strike, and I was the picket lines on those things. It was different. It was much more of a almost a circus environment. Nina Vargelis came by with pizza and Starbucks, and people would come by. She did My Greek Fat Wedding or whatever it is. I'm horribly butchering her name. But I remember she showed up with pizzas, and I was like, wow, get pizzas. And on the strike, I was on there, and I was with my wife, and I said, do you notice this strike on the picket line? Were very few minorities, none. Number of writers that were Latino or Black at that point was very minuscule. It hasn't changed that much. But the difference is in these years, we have a whole different movement of younger Latino writers that are coming in that are seeing that they don't have a future, and younger Black minorities, and also women as well, because the people that are being most affected by this strike and the future negotiations are minorities and women, because understandably, when white writers, which have been the majority of the Writers Guild, I would call the Writers Guild the whitest guild of America instead of the Writers Guild of America. But those people, myself included, are seeing that there's less opportunity, there's less jobs. People are turning into a gig sort of economy for a lot of these guys, where you may get a chance to write on a show, but your contract's going to be a lot less, and it may not be, and there'll be probably less writers than before. And they're seeing a downturn, and writers have actually statistically are making less money right now than they were before.
Yeah, there were some articles where some of the writers were getting residue in pennies, checks in pennies, instead of where they used to be getting, a substantive living wage.
No, the future doesn't look well promising for women and minorities. And what happens is in this new thought of Hollywood, if we need to have inclusion, and we need minorities, and we need women, and all these thousand things, the business side of Hollywood is saying no to that. And they're not saying no overtly. They're saying no financially, because if I financially can make sure that we only have a few writers, and writers are based on the ones that we know. In other words, people hire who they know. And if traditionally they've known white writers and they've hired white writers, and white writers will continue to hire white writers, then they'll be excluded financially, because people will use the thing they've used on me for years. Oh, we'd love to have a Latino, but there's not a real Latino storyline, or there's no Latino character on this show. And that is odd for people to realize, because that goes back to the true problem of minority representation. When you say you are excluded, if it says whites only at a drinking fountain, and you go, oh my God, this is prejudice. But they don't have to put up the sign that says whites only at a drinking fountain. They just make it too expensive to get into the country club where that drinking fountain is. So exclusion is done economically. That is the problem. And that's the deeper problem.
Now, wouldn't the idea of including more people to watch more shows, Latinos, women, etc., actually bring more revenue rather than reducing it?
It would bring more revenue, but the problem is they don't need to distinguish between audiences. It's a mass. If you sat there and said, you know something, our network gets really great numbers. They don't go, our network gets really great numbers from Black people, from Asians, from this group. They just get good numbers. So they fit in the mass. So basically, there's no incentive to try to get programming that will really affect these people on an emotional level, an inclusive level, and be included, because that is not in the metrics of AI. It's not in the metrics. They're looking at numbers. They're not looking at people and groups.
Okay, tell us more about that because, normally when you hear of a strike, you think it's higher wages or stable paying structures, fair deals, and all that. But now I'm hearing more and more of this whole idea of the provisions of AI, not only being taking away jobs, but also diminishing the opportunities. And you mentioned that. What do you mean by that?
Well, what AI in terms of, in some ways, is they're looking at AI as going, there's actual thought that we can create a script through AI. We can create a script through AI. They're already doing a chat box and things like that, where scripts are being done professionally through AI. I see it in my LinkedIn. I'll go congratulate someone, and they'll just say, "Just congratulations, job well done." I didn't say that, but I'll either choose to say congratulations, well, job done, or say put in my own personal message. So more and more, they're thinking that AI actually will become scripts. AI eventually will become scripts. And all that is leading out the human touch of a writer. If I have a computer that has every single word in the English language, Shakespeare had a working vocabulary of 90,000 words or something like that. Amazing amount of vocabulary of 12,000. I'm not sure on those numbers, but it's around that. So if you sat there and said, I have Shakespeare in my computer with all these different ways to say it, eventually it will learn how to write it correctly. And then maybe it'll write it at a basic bones level. And then a writer will come in and solidify it. So then you'll need less writers. Because if I get just like I've done this where I worked for Televisa, where they would say, hey, we want to do telenovelas in English. They handed me the English version of the telenovela that they had translated to the translator. It came to about 30 pages for a 1 hour script. Now, 1 hour script is 52 pages or 54, and around these numbers. So that means I had to add 20 some odd pages to the script because the actual language of Spanish is much more flowery. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. English is much more direct and scientific. So all of a sudden I had to come in. They brought me in to fix that problem. And I ended up writing a great deal. So, but that means they hired less writers for that. They thought one guy can do it.
Well, most of the work was done through different systems and they just added on a little cap on that. So do you see a future for members of the Writers Guild of America?
Well, it has to be in some ways. The bigger issue is this. We're under wealth disparity. I tend to look at what are the real issues here besides they estimate like 3% more wages increase. Now, the average CEO at these companies is at $38 million. $50 million a year, $60 million a year. These are numbers that are for the CEOs. And that's also the real problem in terms of America. The CEOs are making $60 million, whereas a guy working in the line is making a lot less minimum wage and may not have health care and may not have all these different issues. So it actually is the big problem of reinventing the system. Capitalism is a wonderful system if not run by people, because capitalism.
Wait. So say that one again.
Capitalism is a wonderful system if not run by people, because capitalism takes the heart out of humanity and says we're reduced to numbers and cause and effect and mathematical equations. If I sit there and say, something, I really like one of our workers. He's an older gentleman. We could keep him here for 2 more years and let him have his retirement. But something? We need to cut back, so we should let him go now. Really? Could you have helped someone and just sat there and said to you? Now, here's the thing. Recently, the Dodgers kept one of their players was going through bipolar episodes and all these different problems, and they kept that player on for health care. And to me, that's humanity. And that's the difference between AI. It's humanity looking at a problem, a multifaceted thing that humans are, and says, you know something, I think we can make a little bit less profit to help this person achieve their goals and not end up being homeless and not being end up, because now we're seeing a world of wealth disparity where we see much more homeless people. And I remember as a child that one of my best friends took me to Tijuana, Mexico, named Nicky Witt. And he took me there and he saw people begging in the streets in poverty. And he said, oh my God, Rick, we're Americans. You'll never see that in America. How wrong was Nicky Witt? And that was, what, 50 years ago? You're seeing poverty in America. We're seeing people making more money than the average worker. We're seeing unions destroyed. We're seeing people not having safety nets to survive. You know, and as George Carlin said, you know why they have the rich and the middle class and the poor? Because they need the middle class to be scared shitless from the poor, because they don't want to end up that.
So number crunching has taken over more of the humanity side of it, and even this has penetrated this business.
And what's happened is we need to have opportunities as writers to bring minority writers and women into better positions and make more exclusivity, not for the reasons people think. It's like, oh no, that's wrong. Why should we be forced to do that? Because the system of writing is you have a staff. And I might bring a young staff writer on that's maybe not the most important person on that staff. But you know something? He'll learn the business. He'll become better, or she will become better. And when you look at the programs they've had in the past, the minority programs in the studios are all dysfunctional and wrong. Diversity programs in studios tend to be wrong. And I've seen them. I ran diversity for 12 years at a network, and I saw how it was done. And they would come up with formulas that were insane. Like, oh, Rick, she's Armenian. Armenians aren't minorities. Who said that? You know, oh, that guy, no, that he's only half Filipino. That's not a minority. So his white side totally devoided his brown side. All these different things. And everyone's trying to think of these formulas and ways to do things. But it's very simple. Give people a working wage. Give them an opportunity to go forward, and it will make the craft better. That's what will happen. The fact that I bring a minority in, it gives me a chance, a true chance, to look at the whole picture. If you look at lions on the Serengeti and a pride of lions, every one of them is looking in a different direction. They're looking for danger. They're looking for prey. They're looking for opportunity. You need a group of people of many colors that looks for different opportunities and different ways to think of a problem. That's why if I have someone who's white on my staff or brown on my staff or black on my staff, I see the world in all its colors. And it helps me become a better writer. You know, I recently wrote a book with Sanjeev Chopra about writing. And we were talking, and he said, Rick, what's wrong with this? Because we had examples of great speeches. And I said, I'm not sure. He said, there's not a woman speech in here. And it caught me. I said, wow, I didn't see that. Thank you. You're absolutely right. We don't have a woman's speech. So we had to go back and added a woman's speech. Now, luckily, Sanjeev, brilliant man from Harvard Med, India, saw that, but I didn't see it. And as I can sit there and say, as liberal and fine and good a person I am, I have blind spots naturally as a human. And sometimes I need to be reminded of things. And I'm willing to learn and to say, you know, something. Just like the whole idea of prejudice, we all have a certain amount of prejudice within us. I'm guilty of prejudice, just like everyone else. I need to constantly be checking myself to see how I can keep my prejudice in check and down, and how not to make assumptions about people and to see people individually. I have to constantly do that. Why can't a white executive do that as well? That's pride. I'm willing to see that I'm wrong, and I want to learn more and more every day. And that's why that perspective is in there. And so it's not just the Writers Guild asking for more, asking for a fair wage and asking for more writers in a writer's room and things like that. It's really protecting the future of writing. That's why it's important.
You know, one more point. I know you're busy and you got to get back to issues with the labor movement, but I do want to cover one area. You are very much part of setting a cultural trend in a country, through your writing, through your characters, through their activities, things they say on the shows. I mean, that's a huge responsibility to be setting something into the cultural standard of the country. And if you don't have these people, then where do we see each other and how do we respect each other?
Well, I mean, I learned an important lesson all the way back in the Living Color days. When I first started my career, I was given an opportunity from an African American that reached out to me, and I started to realize there's far more similarities between African Americans and Latinos than I ever did. I saw where that was. It broadened my experience. You know, I was giving an opportunity from a white female writer for Dr. Quinn. That expanded my opportunities, and you know, we all need each other to a certain extent. But you know something, I was able to bring my expertise of my culture. A lot of times when I've written 4 pilots for the networks and they didn't get picked up, some producers said, I'm just like a Jewish deli. Next. And I said, I can't feel that way because I've let down so many millions of people that are Latino that will never see their image on camera and will never hear their story. And when you hear your story and when you see your image, and better yet, for our youth and the rest, when you can see an example, you can be an example. That's why I went back to school, so I could get an MFA, so I could actually teach in college. So they could see, because I never had a single Latino teacher in college. I had only one Chicano studies teacher. That was it. My entire college career, my entire MFA career, not a single Latino. And that's a unique problem. And that's why seeing Latinos in positions like that are so very important. It's not quantitative, qualitative. You can't sit there and put a number to it or data to it or anything else. Like, it's our human life. And if you look at a flower, how important is a flower? You know, Ray Bradbury did a very famous story about going back in time. And in time, the man killed a Tyrannosaurus Rex and he comes back in the future. And he realizes he's in this future where there's no color. And he looks at the bottom of his shoe and he sees a butterfly.
I remember that. I remember that show.
Yeah. So you look at that and you say, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about things that we can quantify or put in a number. We're talking about humanity. And the more we have AI and things like that, the more we have to keep reminding ourselves of where the humans putting in the data and the data we put in, what is important. So if I put in data that the most important thing for my network is to include Latinos in the viewing population, then that's a number that will change. But if that's not in that data and it's not in that number, and that's not what we want to look at, it's not going to be looked at. And it's proven by, you know, if you look at how, I don't think AI would have ever allowed Ricky Ricardo to get on there. In fact, Ricky Ricardo, when he got I Love Lucy on there, paid for the cinematography, did the show 12 times around the country in different venues to prove that it was universal. And he had been married to Lucy himself for 12 years before he did the I Love Lucy show. And at that time, they wanted a white guy to play I Love Lucy's husband. Look how hard he had to fight to bring in reality. That's a scary thing. They had to fight that hard. And in many times, television, the best television, has always been done as an accident. Saturday Night Live would have never got on the air. It was put at a certain time zone that no one remembered, and they gave it a chance. And look what happened. Even if you look at the idea of Monty Python's Crazy Circus. In fact, at one point, it was on the BBC, and someone said, "What the hell is these numbers on this show?" Because it was so late night and so forgotten that it was allowed to germinate and to become a hit. So a lot of times, you know, we don't know. Many hits, you can name it off. Family Guy. They got rid of Family Guy, and all of a sudden the DVDs sold so well. They said, "What the heck's going on here?" And they brought it back. So we make mistakes left and right, but the true mistake is not including minorities and women and people of color into a industry that hasn't had that representation for years. And I fought for this representation. And, you know, and I fought for it because I thought it was important, not for me, but for future generations. Unfortunately, I look at life and I say, you know, it goes by very fast. It goes by in a blink of an eye. We all know that. And if, you know, me and you both are old enough to look and go, wait a minute.
Hey, wait a minute.
I don't mean to call you out on myself. I can go, look, it seemed only a second ago I was in high school. And now I'm looking here, I've got a dog at my feet, and I'm looking at my 2 daughters here and going, wow, it's only flashes of light and all these seconds. And in the end, we all want to have a better world for everyone. And when unions fight for issues and rights, we're making it better. You know, when they talk about how they put down liberals, liberal tards, all these liberals. They don't realize because of liberals, we have all these rights. I'm proud to call myself liberal. Because of liberals, we have children's rights, we have women voting, we have all these things because I'm liberal and progressive. And what is progress? Progress can be very good with humanity behind it. So that's what the whole fight is with the Writers Guild.
I want to thank you, Rick, many a times for bringing the humanity into the issues. Because if you look at just a newspaper, you think, gee, this is only about money. This is only about the future. It's only about protection of an income. But it's much more than that. It's also the humanism of the entire industry. And just, I want to thank you for that, and all the members also as well, who keep reminding us that we can't all depend on AI and algorithms to make our decisions for us.
Well, thank you. We always wonder what our purpose is in life. And I think if my purpose is to remind people to be more human, then that was my purpose, and I'm proud to have lived it. Thanks.
I am very proud to be here and listening to you. Rick, success to everything you're doing, and I look forward to bringing you on board and bringing everybody up to par, how people can be more part of the industry. And I think you're very proud of it, and I hope it preserves the missions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Adios, Rick.
Adios.